In our last episode, the Ottoman Empire was mocked as the sick man of Europe. The insult rang through palaces and chancelleries alike, and worse, it began to sound true. But the dying empire was about to become the battlefield of Europe's great powers. What began with a quarrel over holy keys in Jerusalem would end in cannon fire on the Black Sea, diseased corpses littering the Crimean landscape, and the bloodiest war Europe had seen since Napoleon. This is Road to Destruction, the World Wars. When Nicholas I sent his armies across the Danube in 1853, it seemed the Ottomans faced certain ruin. Russian troops marched into Moldavia and Wallachia, demanding that Abdülmecid grant him full protection rights over Orthodox Christians. For Istanbul, the demand was submission in all but name. The Sultan refused, and the Russian bear began to feast on the Balkans. But Abdülmecid was not alone. Britain and France, alarmed at Russia's ambitions, declared that the Ottoman Empire must be defended. Lord Palmerston in London feared the Russian fleet in the Mediterranean would soon menace India. Napoleon III in Paris saw a chance to match the glories of his uncle and place France at the heart of Europe again. Their ships and soldiers poured into the Bosporus. Their flags flew alongside the Sultan's. And for a fleeting moment, Abdülmecid stood as the equal of Europe's emperors, the recognition he had dreamed of since boyhood. The war's first great clash came at sea. In November 1853, Russian ships annihilated an Ottoman squadron at Sinop, burning men alive in their wooden hulks. Europe erupted in outrage. For Britain and France, Sinope was proof that Russia meant to dominate the Black Sea. In 1854, they declared war, and the Eastern question turned from diplomacy into battle. British and French soldiers landed in Crimea, laying siege to Sevastopol. Sardinia even sent troops eager for a seat at the peace table. Austria occupied the Danubian provinces, blocking Russia's advance, yet never joined the war. Ottoman forces bled too at battles like Silistra and Eupatoria, but in every campaign it was clear success relied on European firepower and funding. French cannons, British steamships and foreign loans carried the war. The Crimean War was less a contest of cannon than of cholera. Disease killed far more men than cannons or musket. Russian and British camps lost half their strength to typhus and dysentery. French regiments wasted away in the mud, and Ottoman battalions sent to the front with poor supplies were ravaged by plague. Hospitals became charnel houses until Florence Nightingale's reforms brought order to the British wards, while Ottoman soldiers, lacking their own lady with the lamp, often died unseen. In the end, the war's deadliest enemy was not Nicholas's armies, but the filth, hunger and sickness that consumed them all. The cost was staggering. To keep pace, Abdülmecid's government turned even more to the Galata bankers and European creditors, mortgaging more future revenues for present survival. Steam frigates were ordered on British credit, rifles on French loans. The war was paid for in debt, debts that would never be escaped. The siege of Sevastopol became the war's grim centerpiece. For a year, British, French, Sardinian and Ottoman troops battered Russia's great naval base on the Black Sea. Trenches stretched for miles, entire battalions rotted in the mud, while Ottoman soldiers, often overlooked, fought in the same filth and endured the same hunger. The fall of Sevastopol in 1855 was hailed as Europe's victory. After 3 years of carnage, Sevastopol fell, Nicholas I died, and his heir Alexander II sued for peace. The war had cost 500,000 lives on both sides, many of them Ottoman subjects conscripted into a war decided in foreign capitals. At the Congress of Paris in 1856, the Sultan's diplomats sat at the same table as Britain, France and Russia, for the first time treated as formal equals. The treaty declared the empire's sovereignty guaranteed by Europe, the Black Sea neutralized, Russian warships banished and Ottoman Christians under international protection. But behind the triumph lay humiliation. Every clause that proclaimed sovereignty also advertised dependence. Ottoman rights were no longer self-evident. They were gifts bestowed by the powers that had saved the empire. Abdülmecid entered the hall as the triumphant sultan who had stood against the bear and lived. And for a moment the applause felt real, even if measured in loans and foreign generals' deeds. But the victory was hollow. The empire had survived only by drowning in debt, borrowing soldiers as much as money. The British and French had not fought for Istanbul. They had fought for their own sea lanes, for India, for glory. Abdülmecid's laurels were borrowed ones, his empire's lifeline purchased at a price that would never stop rising. For the ordinary Ottoman soldier, the Crimean War was not glory, but exhaustion. Anatolian peasants were marched north with little pay and poor rations, often serving under foreign officers who barely spoke their tongue. They fought bravely at Silistra, at Eupatoria, even in the trenches before Sevastopol, but their role was overshadowed by British and French armies who claimed the laurels. The empire's dead were buried under foreign banners, their sacrifice another reminder that Ottoman victories were no longer Ottoman alone. To his people, the war revealed an empire unable to stand alone. To his creditors, it marked the beginning of permanent oversight, and to his enemies, it confirmed the truth Nicholas had spoken. The Ottoman Empire was still sick, only now sustained on European medicine. The war ended with parades and treaties. The Sultan could proclaim victory. Russia humbled, the Black Sea neutralized, the empire saved. But in the silence after the cannon, Abdülmecid felt only emptiness as he received hollow cheers. His empire had survived not through strength, but through loans, through allies who mocked him, and through soldiers who were not his own. Victory had stripped him of more than defeat might have. It bound his empire to Europe's banks, Europe's generals, Europe's mercy. Yet even as he nursed this humiliation, another stage was opening. Far from the Black Sea, famine stalked Ireland, and millions starved under Europe's gaze. It would be here, not with fleets or cannon, that Abdülmecid would surprise the world. In our next episode, Ireland, Islam, and Identity, Abdülmecid steps onto a different stage. No armies, no treaties, no debts. Instead, a gesture across faiths and continents, aid for a starving island at Europe's edge. It was a moment when a Muslim sultan humbled the great Christian powers, not with war, but with compassion, and yet even this triumph would reveal the contradictions of his reign. The empire could feed others, but not itself. This is Road to Destruction, the World Wars.